I want you to close your eyes for a second and imagine something. Imagine you are sitting in the Kremlin. It's late March. The war has been dragging on for more than 4 years. Your generals tell you every week that your air defense network is impenetrable. Your propaganda machine tells the Russian people every day that your country is invulnerable, that no enemy could ever reach the heart of your industrial power. And then, in the span of 72 hours, 3 of your most strategically vital oil installations, all of them hundreds of miles inside your own territory, all of them supposed to be unreachable, are set on fire, one after another, after another. How do you explain that to your people? Russia's answer, and you cannot make this up, was to tell the world that Ukraine must have cheated, that it was impossible for Ukrainian drones to fly that far through Russian airspace, that someone must have helped, that NATO countries Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia must have allowed Ukraine to use their airspace. Let that sink in for a moment. The country that claims to have the best air defense systems on Earth, the country that has spent decades telling the world its territory is untouchable, when 3 of its most important energy hubs burned simultaneously, its answer was to blame Latvia. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly what happened between March 23rd and March 26th, 2026. I'm going to show you the evidence. I'm going to show you what Russia said, and then I'm going to show you exactly why every word of it was a lie. And then I'm going to explain why what Ukraine pulled off in those 72 hours may be one of the most strategically significant events of this entire war, because this isn't just a story about drones. This is a story about how a smaller, poorer country, one that Russia planned to conquer in 3 days, is slowly, methodically burning down the economic engine that funds Russia's war machine, and they're doing it from 1,000 kilometers away. Party 1, Le 23 Mars, Primorsk and Flam. Let's start at the beginning, March 23rd, 2026, overnight. The Leningrad region of northwestern Russia, the region surrounding St. Petersburg, one of Russia's most important industrial and economic centers, erupted in the sounds of explosions. The target was the port of Primorsk, and if that name doesn't immediately ring a bell for you, it should, because Primorsk is not just a port, it is Russia's largest oil export terminal on the Baltic Sea. According to Bloomberg's confirmed reporting from that morning, Primorsk handles up to 1 million barrels of oil per day. That's the endpoint of the Baltic pipeline system, the massive infrastructure artery that carries crude oil from the interior of Russia all the way to the Baltic coast, where it gets loaded onto tankers and shipped to buyers across the world. This is where Russia's shadow fleet operates. You've heard that term, the shadow fleet. These are privately owned tankers sailing under flags of convenience from landlocked African countries like Malawi and Botswana, carrying millions of barrels of Russian oil that is technically under Western sanctions. They are the vessels that keep the Kremlin's war chest funded, despite everything the United States and Europe have tried to do to cut off Russia's income. And Primorsk is their home port, their loading dock, their economic lifeline to Moscow. On the night of March 23rd, Ukraine sent them a message. Euromaidan Press reported on a Tu-49 drone overnight attack, a massive coordinated swarm. Russia's regional governor, Alexander Drozdenko, was forced to confirm on his Telegram channel that a fuel tank had been damaged and set ablaze, and that personnel had been evacuated from the site. He initially tried to downplay it, describing damage to a single tank, suggesting it was under control. The satellite imagery told a different story. Images captured by Planet Labs and published by Reuters and Al Jazeera showed smoke rising from the Transneft Port Primorsk oil terminal the following morning, visible from miles away. According to Militarny.com, which tracked the damage using Copernicus satellite imagery and NASA's Firm's fire monitoring system, berths number 1, 2, 4, 8, and 9 were damaged in the attack. A major fire broke out in the tank farm area. Ukrainian General Staff confirmed the strike, stating that both the tank farm and oil loading infrastructure were affected. According to Reuters, industry sources confirmed that same morning that Primorsk port had suspended all operations. Tankers were not going in, tankers were not going out. And as ship tracking data from marine traffic would later show, at least 50 vessels backed up in the Gulf of Finland waiting at anchor for a port that was on fire. In 2025, Primorsk exported 16.8 million tons of petroleum products, according to Reuters calculations. Every day that port is offline represents a massive financial hemorrhage for the Russian budget. And on March 23rd, it was very much offline. Now here's the part that matters. To reach Primorsk from Ukraine, those drones had to travel nearly 1,000 kilometers, roughly 620 miles through Russian airspace. That means flying over multiple Russian air defense zones, multiple radar networks, multiple interceptor batteries. Russian air defense systems that the Kremlin has spent tens of billions of dollars building, maintaining, and promoting as among the best in the world. Governor Drozdenko himself admitted that air defense systems intercepted more than 70 Ukrainian drones over the Leningrad region that night, more than 70, and enough still got through to set one of Russia's most critical oil ports on fire. What does that tell you about Russia's air defenses? Party 2, Al-25 Mars, UST Luga Borlu à son tour. Ukraine was not done. 2 nights later, on March 25th, the drones came back. This time the target was Ust-Luga, the other giant. Located about 80 kilometers south of Primorsk along the Baltic coast, Ust-Luga is arguably even more strategically important. According to Reuters and the Kyiv Independent, Ust-Luga exported 32.9 million tons of oil products in 2025, nearly double Primorsk's volume. It can process approximately 700,000 barrels of oil per day. It also handles a critical portion of Russia's liquefied natural gas exports, with facilities operated by Novatek, Russia's second largest LNG producer, according to the Kyiv Independent's confirmed reporting. The Moscow Times reported that Ukraine launched its largest overnight wave of drone attacks of the year in this assault, targeting Ust-Luga and sparking a significant fire at the terminal's gas condensate processing and export facilities. The Kyiv Independent confirmed that the Ukrainian military struck the Novatek terminal directly, causing fires at storage infrastructure and loading facilities. The smoke from the Ust-Luga fire was visible from Finland, according to the Moscow Times, citing the Finnish newspaper Helsingin Sanomat. The smoke stretched for dozens of kilometers along the Gulf of Finland coastline. Think about that geography for a moment. The port of Ust-Luga is in Russia. The smoke was visible from a NATO country across the water. Governor Drozdenko was once again forced to confirm an attack on his Telegram channel. He again tried to minimize. He again failed, because Reuters had already done the math. By March 25th, with Primorsk damaged from the 23rd attack, and now Ust-Luga shut down, Reuters calculated that at least 40% of Russia's seaborne oil export capacity had been knocked offline. Roughly 2 million barrels per day, gone, not flowing, not generating revenue, sitting in tanks that were on fire or waiting in a queue of 50 backed-up tankers in the Gulf of Finland. According to Ukrainska Pravda, Russia had lost over 40% of its oil export capacity as a result of these strikes, combined with other factors, including the seizure of tankers and damage to the Druzhba pipeline to Hungary and Slovakia, which had been halted since January. This was, according to Reuters, the most severe oil supply disruption in the modern history of Russia, the world's second largest oil exporter. Let me repeat that. The most severe oil supply disruption in the modern history of Russia, caused by Ukrainian drones flying nearly 1,000 kilometers through Russian airspace that was supposed to be impenetrable, and Ukraine wasn't finished yet. Party 3, Al-26 Mars, La Raffinerie Kinef. On the night of March 25th to 26th, while the fires at Ust-Luga were still burning, Ukraine's drone crews were already in the air again. Their target, the Kirishi Petroleum Organic Synthesis Refinery, known in Russia as the Kinef Refinery, located in the city of Kirishi, southeast of St. Petersburg, in the same Leningrad Oblast that Ukraine had now struck twice in 3 days. According to Kiev Post's reporting, confirmed on March 27th, more than 20 Ukrainian drones successfully reached the Kirishi district and struck industrial infrastructure at or near the Kinev facility. The Ukrainian General Staff confirmed the strike, stating that flames engulfed the crude oil processing units and 2 storage tanks at the facility. Why does Kinev matter so much? According to the Kiev Independent, which has been tracking Ukrainian strikes on Russian refineries, the Kinev facility accounts for 6.6% of Russia's total oil refining volumes, a single refinery 6.6% of everything Russia processes, and according to Euromaidan Press, Kinev processes approximately 350,000 barrels per day, making it one of the largest refineries in the entire country. This is not a peripheral target. This is a core piece of Russia's industrial nervous system, a facility that supplies not just export oil, but the refined fuels, gasoline, diesel, jet fuel that Russia uses to power its military equipment, its logistics convoys, its fighter jets. Governor Drozdenko, who by this point had issued 3 damage confirmation statements in less than 4 days, confirmed that an industrial zone in the Kirishi district had sustained damage. He offered no further details, but social media wouldn't let him hide it. Videos and photos shared from local witnesses showed flames lighting the night sky above the Kirishi district and thick columns of black smoke rising above the refinery. Satellite imagery analyzed by open-source intelligence analysts, including the Cyberbaroshno and Astra OSINT teams, confirmed fire activity consistent with a strike on fuel storage infrastructure. Flight operations at Pulkovo Airport in St. Petersburg, Russia's second-largest city, were temporarily suspended for the 2nd consecutive night due to the drone threat. Major airports in Moscow, including Sheremetyevo, Vnukovo, and Domodedovo, also restricted flights as Russia's air defense network went into emergency mode across multiple regions simultaneously. 3 strikes, 3 days, 3 fires, hundreds of miles inside Russia, all successful. Party 4, Le mensonge russe et la réponse. And now we get to the part of this story that is almost too absurd to believe if we didn't have the receipts. Russia's official response to these 3 strikes was not to acknowledge the obvious. It was not to admit that Ukrainian drones had flown nearly 1,000 kilometers through Russian airspace, defeating multiple layers of air defenses and burned down 3 of its most valuable energy installations. Russia's official response was to claim it was physically impossible. Russian official sources argued that Ukrainian drones could not have traveled that route through Russian territory undetected. Therefore, they claimed, the drones must have taken a different route, flying west out of Ukraine into Poland, then north into Lithuania, then east across Latvia and Estonia, and along the Gulf of Finland coastline to reach St. Petersburg. In other words, Russia blamed NATO. Let's pause on that for a second. Russia is claiming that 4 NATO member states, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, either actively allowed or negligently failed to stop Ukrainian military drones transiting their airspace to attack Russian soil. The response from those countries was swift, clear, and devastating to the Kremlin's narrative. The Latvian Ministry of Defense issued a formal statement, quoted in detail by the original source material, that left nothing open to interpretation. Latvia, as well as Lithuania and Estonia, are not involved in the planning and implementation of Ukraine's counterattack on Russia. With such statements, Russia is demonstrating its weakness and trying to divert attention from the fact that it is unable to defend itself against successful Ukrainian counterattacks on Russian infrastructure on the Baltic Sea coast. The Latvian MOD went further, accusing Russia of running a deliberate misinformation campaign designed to discredit NATO, divide public opinion, undermine trust in government institutions, and weaken international support for Ukraine. But the most comprehensive dismantling of Russia's narrative came from the open-source intelligence analyst Drone Bomber, posting on X on March 26th, who systematically destroyed every element of Russia's claim with one simple, irrefutable piece of evidence. The Air Alert maps. Here's how it works. In Ukraine and Russia, whenever hostile drones are detected approaching a region, air alerts are issued for that region. Those alerts are logged publicly. And on the nights of March 23rd, 25th, and 26th, there is a clearly visible sequential trail of air alerts moving across exactly the regions that lie between Ukraine and the Leningrad Oblast, Bryansk, Smolensk, Novgorod, Pskov, region after region, in the exact geographic order you would expect if drones were flying north through Russian territory. There is no such trail through Polish airspace. There is no such trail through the Baltic states. Drone Bomber also highlighted another piece of evidence that Russia itself had provided. Russia's own Ministry of Defense announced the numbers of Ukrainian drones shot down on each of those 3 nights. March 23rd, Governor Drozdenko reported more than 50 drones intercepted over Leningrad Oblast. March 25th, Russian air defenses claimed 33 more drones shot down. March 26th, Russian sources reported 21 additional drones destroyed. Think about what that means. Russia is simultaneously claiming these drones never flew over Russian territory. We shot down dozens of them over Russian territory, as Drone Bomber put it, and this quote should be preserved forever. The picture is hilarious. Alerts across the whole country, air defense working at full capacity, hundreds shot down, yet the drones supposedly never flew over Russia. Draw your own conclusions, friends. Logic has never been Russian propaganda's strong suit, and it's worth noting one additional detail flagged by Kyiv Post. During the March 26th wave, a small number of drones did veer off course. One crashed in Latvia after entering from Russian airspace and detonated on impact, and another briefly crossed Estonian territory before returning. If Ukraine were routing its drones through those countries intentionally, why would Russian airspace be their entry point? The answer is obvious to anyone willing to look at a map. Russia simply cannot admit the truth, because the truth is devastating. Partie 5. Ce que ça signifie vraiment. Let me put these 3 strikes into their full strategic context, because when you step back and look at the big picture, what Ukraine achieved in those 72 hours is extraordinary on multiple levels. First, the immediate economic damage. According to Reuters, not a Ukrainian source, not a Western advocacy outlet, but the gold standard wire service that covers global commodity markets, these 3 strikes, combined with existing disruptions, knocked approximately 40% of Russia's oil export capacity offline, about 2 million barrels per day, gone. That matters enormously because Russia is fighting an incredibly expensive war. According to analysts and reporting from earlier in 2026, the Kremlin was counting on an oil price windfall from the Iran-related Hormuz crisis to help refill its war chest. Brent crude had surged from $70 per barrel in late February to over $108 per barrel by March 26th, according to Reuters and Al Jazeera's combined coverage. Russia was positioned to earn massive amounts from that price surge. Ukraine's drone campaign was a direct response to that, a deliberate attempt to ensure that Russia could not capitalize on the global energy crisis to fund its own war. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky told Reuters directly, as quoted by Euromaidan Press, "The pressure on Russia in the world is decreasing. Therefore, unlike most countries in the world, Ukraine has its own sanctions, its long-range capabilities. Ukraine's drones are sanctions enforcement delivered by fire. Second, the psychological and political impact." A leaked Rosneft internal document, published days before the latest strikes, according to Euromaidan Press, showed the company's own engineers admitting in writing that physical defenses at Russian industrial facilities do not guarantee the safety of protected objects against Ukrainian drones. Russia's own engineers, in a confidential document, acknowledging that they cannot protect their infrastructure. When that kind of admission exists internally, and when the public reality of 3 burning ports and refineries confirms it externally, the propaganda architecture that Russia has built around military invincibility starts to crack. Not just for Western audiences, for Russian ones, for the oligarchs who own those facilities, for the factory workers, for the military officers who've been told for years that their country's defenses are impenetrable. Third, the demonstration of reach and capability. Consider what Ukraine has achieved in terms of drone range progression over the past year. According to Euromaidan Press, Ukrainian drone strikes 50 to 250 kilometers inside Russia had quadrupled to 45 per month in the year leading up to these strikes. In February 2026, Ukraine struck a Lukoil refinery 1,700 kilometers from its border, the longest confirmed drone strike in the war to that point. Now, in late March, it is sustaining 3 consecutive nights of major strikes on high-value targets at the outer edge of that range. This is not improvisation. This is a systematic, expanding, long-range air campaign conducted by a country that does not have an air force capable of reaching those targets with conventional aircraft. Ukraine has built an asymmetric deep strike capability out of drones that no one, not the Pentagon, not NATO analysts, not Russian generals, fully anticipated. Fourth, the message to Moscow. Ukrainska Pravda reported something that deserves your full attention. Russia hasn't just lost oil export capacity from these 3 strikes. Combined with other disruptions, the Druzhba pipeline to Hungary and Slovakia halted since January, other Black Sea port attacks. Russia has now lost over 40% of its oil export capacity, according to those calculations. At an oil price of $108 per barrel, 2 million barrels per day is over $200 million in daily revenue that is not flowing into the Russian budget every day. For every day those facilities are shut down, damaged, or operating below capacity. Repair timelines at facilities of this scale are measured in weeks and months, not days. And while Russia is patching up Primorsk and Ust-Luga and Kirishi, Ukraine's drone crews are already planning the next target. Party 6. Elle réponse qui ne vient pas. There's something else going on here that I want you to appreciate. Russia talks constantly about its supposed superiority, its military doctrine, its air defense umbrella, the invulnerability of its strategic infrastructure. It has spent 4 years telling its own people that Ukraine is losing, that the West's weapons don't work, that Russian territory is safe. Every one of those claims got a little harder to sustain after March 26th. But here's what's really revealing. In the days following these 3 strikes, what was Russia's military response? There was a massive Russian drone and missile assault on Ukraine, 948 drones and 34 missiles in a 24-hour period, according to the Institute for the Study of War, which called it a record number in a single day. Ukraine's air defenses reportedly shot down 97% of the kamikaze drones in that wave. 5 Ukrainians were killed, more than 40 wounded. It was devastating and it was brutal, and it demonstrated once again that Russia's response to having its own infrastructure targeted is to rain destruction on Ukrainian civilians. But Russia did not stop Ukraine's drone campaign. It did not hit Ukraine's drone production facilities because, as Zelensky revealed in January 2026, Ukraine is now producing at least 2,000 interceptor drones per day. It did not restore its oil port operations. It did not fix its shattered narrative. Only a few days after the Kirishi strike on March 30th, Ukraine struck again. According to the source material, at least 5 explosions rocked the city of Tolyatti in the Samara region in southwest Russia at around 5 a.m. local time, with fires breaking out at a major chemical plant. The same night, another drone strike hit the Alchevsk metallurgical plant in occupied Luhansk, a facility that Russia had converted from civilian metallurgy to military production. A large-scale fire broke out there too. Russia's air defenses failed. Again, this is the pattern. This is what Ukraine has turned into: a reliable, repeatable operational model, long-range drones, high-value economic targets, fires that take days to extinguish, shutdowns that take weeks to repair, revenue losses that accumulate by the hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's working. Conclusion. Le message qui doit être entendu. Let me bring this home for you, because I think there are a few things that every American watching this show needs to understand about what happened in those 72 hours in March 2026. The first thing is this: Ukraine is not just defending territory. Ukraine has developed through 4 years of brutal necessity with far fewer resources than its enemy, one of the most effective long-range drone strike capabilities in the world. Not theoretical, not on a testing range, in active combat against a nuclear power from 1,000 kilometers away. The second thing is this: Russia's narrative of military invincibility is not just false, it is quantifiably, visibly documented from space false. 3 major oil facilities, 3 fires, 3 damage confirmations from Russia's own regional governor, 40% of oil exports offline. Reuters said it, Bloomberg said it, NASA's satellite confirmed it. The third thing, and this is the one that matters most for the long game, is that Ukraine's drone campaign is not random. It is strategic, it is systematic, and it is working. Russia is running an incredibly expensive war. According to multiple analyses published in 2025 and 2026, Russia's military expenditure has been consuming an ever larger share of its national budget. That spending is only sustainable if the revenue keeps flowing, and the revenue flows through pipelines, ports, and refineries, through Primorsk, through Ust-Luga, through Kiev. Ukraine is not trying to win this war in a single dramatic battle. It is burning down the financial infrastructure that makes the war possible in the first place, one tank farm at a time, one loading berth at a time, one refinery at a time. And for every facility that burns, for every export terminal that goes dark, for every tanker that sits in queue waiting for a port that's offline, there is less money in Moscow's budget, less money for missiles, less money for drones, less money for salaries, less money for the grinding, consuming machinery of war. Ukraine has found Russia's weakness, and it's not on the front line in Luhansk, it's on the Baltic Sea coast, 1,000 kilometers from the border, in ports and pipelines and refineries that Russia believed, right up until March 23rd, were safely beyond reach. They were wrong. And as long as Ukraine keeps flying, and the evidence suggests it will keep flying, that lesson is going to be taught again and again, one burning port at a time, until the cost of this war becomes too great even for the Kremlin to sustain. That's the story of those 72 hours in March. That's what the headlines didn't fully capture, and that's what you needed to hear. I'm Victor Kane. This is Victor Kane Unfiltered. If this gave you something to think about, share it with someone who needs to understand what's actually happening in this war. Subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one.